The rain fell in soft, steady sheets as I stood at the edge of the driveway, watching movers carry elegant furniture, polished wood, glass, and velvet into my sister Tiffany's new mansion. A wedding gift from our parents, the house was worth $3.5 million and sat nestled in one of Philadelphia's most elite neighborhoods. Meanwhile, I lived in a modest little apartment above the bookstore where I worked. It smelled of old paper and fresh coffee, and while I loved it, the leaky sink and creaky floorboards reminded me daily that I was barely getting by. "Oh, isn't it perfect for them?" my mom gushed, oblivious to the fact that I was getting soaked. She stood under a large umbrella, her voice bright with excitement. "Tiffany and Alexander are going to be so happy here, and there's so much space for grandchildren." I forced a smile and nodded, even as my clothes clung to my skin from the rain. I thought about the wedding card I'd scraped together money to buy. No gift, just a card with carefully chosen words. "It's beautiful, Mom," I said quietly. Tiffany appeared at the top of the steps, absolutely flawless in a tailored coat and designer heels, her sparkling engagement ring catching what little light filtered through the gray clouds. "Francis, you finally made it," she called, her voice smooth and cheerful. "So, what do you think of our starter home?" Starter home. The words hit like a slap, as if a nearly $4 million mansion was just the beginning. "It's lovely," I said, swallowing my bitterness. "The perfect wedding present." She laughed, that familiar little laugh that always made me feel small. "Oh, don't be jealous, Fairy. I'm sure you'll meet someone special too. Maybe one of those nice boys at the bookstore." My mom chimed in eagerly. "You know the Clark boy is still single. He's an accountant now, very stable career." I bit the inside of my cheek. I was 33 years old with a master's degree in literature and had been working quietly on my first novel. But to them, I was the daughter who had made all the wrong choices, the one who followed dreams instead of profit, the one who chose books over business, passion over practicality. "I should go," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I've got a shift at the store on a Saturday." Mom frowned, disappointed. "Some of us work weekends," I said, already stepping away. Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Still so dramatic, Fairy. This is why things are hard for you. You always make life more difficult than it has to be. You could have gone to business school, you had a full ride. You turned down the job at Dad's firm, too. Honestly, sometimes I think you enjoy struggling." What they never understood was that their version of help always came with conditions, strings meant to tie me to a future that wasn't mine. Their support felt like golden handcuffs. Accepting meant becoming someone I wasn't. "The bookstore is short-staffed," I said over my shoulder. "I really do need the hours." Mom called out, "At least take some leftovers. I hate thinking of you eating alone in that tiny apartment." But she didn't know that my small space was my safe haven. It was cozy and quiet, filled with stories, ideas, and freedom. It was where I could dream without being judged, write without compromise, and simply be myself. The next morning, I stopped at Stephen's corner store, as I always did for my morning coffee. Stephen, who'd run the place for decades and had become a bit of a grandfather figure to me, looked unusually excited. "Francis, did you check your ticket?" he asked, leaning over the counter with eyes wide. I blinked, confused. "What ticket?" Then I remembered the lottery ticket I bought 3 days ago, a silly little splurge with my last $10 when the jackpot had reached record numbers. I pulled the crumpled ticket from my wallet, shrugging.
No.
"What were the numbers?" Stephen's eyes twinkled. "Check the news, sweetheart." With a sense of curiosity more than hope, I opened my phone and pulled up the lottery website. The winning numbers appeared on the screen: 10, 22, 6, 9, 12, 11. I stared, then looked at my ticket, then back at the screen. My heart began to race. "Stephen," I whispered, "I think I won." He grinned from ear to ear. "I know you did, honey. I watched the draw live last night. All 7 numbers. You just won $122 million. The world tilted. I had to grip the counter to steady myself. Sit, Stephen urged, guiding me to a chair. "Take a breath before you pass out. This is huge, Francis." But you need to be smart. Don't go telling anyone yet. First, get a lawyer. Sign that ticket. And whatever you do, don't let this change the good in you. My fingers shook as I wrote my name on the back of the ticket. In the span of one night, everything had changed. But as I sat there, dazed in the corner store with coffee brewing in the background, I realized something important. Maybe I hadn't taken the easy road. Maybe I hadn't lived up to their expectations. But at that moment, I didn't regret a single choice. And this time, I'd make sure my next chapter was truly mine. I signed the back of the lottery ticket with a hand that was still trembling. Stephen, ever the calm and steady presence, gently took it from me and tucked it safely into his store's old metal safe. Then he handed me a glass of water and made sure I drank every drop, his eyes watching me with the kind of protective care only someone who truly cared could give. "I called Amy," he said, referring to his daughter. "She's a financial attorney, one of the best. She'll meet you in an hour and help you get everything done the right way." I nodded, still in shock. Everything felt like a dream too big to grasp all at once. "Stephen, what about my family?" I whispered. He gave my shoulder a firm squeeze. "We'll figure that out when the time comes. But right now, Francis, this is your moment. Don't let anyone take it from you." While I waited for Amy to arrive, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my sister Tiffany. "Family brunch tomorrow to talk wedding plans. Wear something nice for once, and don't be late like always." I stared at the screen for a long moment, thinking of her mansion, her perfect life, and the endless stream of praise from our parents. For over 22 years, I'd been the forgotten daughter, the one they called impractical, the one they assumed would never amount to anything. But now I had $122 million reasons to prove they were wrong. I typed my reply slowly. "Sorry, can't make it. I have something more important to do." And for the first time in a long while, that wasn't a lie. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in Amy's office, signing the final documents to officially claim the money. She'd been incredible, smart, kind, and fiercely protective. With her help, we created trusts, opened investment accounts, and set up strong legal protections to keep my name as private as possible. "This is the last step," Amy said, flipping through the thick folder of papers. "Once we submit this, your name will become public record. Are you ready for that?" I paused, thinking about how much had changed in just a few short weeks. I had quietly left my job at the bookstore, leaving behind a generous check for my manager to help cover a replacement. I'd bought a lovely, peaceful home in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing flashy, but it was mine. I'd even begun laying the foundation for my own publishing company, a dream I'd shelved for years. I wanted to give a platform to voices like mine, writers who were overlooked or underestimated. "Yes," I said at last, with calm certainty. "I'm ready." The very next morning, headlines exploded across Philadelphia. My name and photo were everywhere. "Local writer wins $122 million lottery jackpot. Bookstore becomes multi-millionaire overnight. Francis Jones claims record-breaking prize." My phone practically vibrated off the table. Messages came in from people I hadn't spoken to in years, old classmates, distant cousins, even people who'd ignored me at family functions were suddenly desperate to reconnect. But the messages I had truly expected came last. Tiffany was first. "OMG, Fairy, why didn't you tell us? Call me now." Then from my mother, Frances Elizabeth Jones, "How could you hide something like this from your family? We're coming over right now. Where do you live?" Finally, a message from Dad. "Your mother is in a state. Call us immediately." I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone, made myself a cup of tea, and sat in my sunlit home office. Through the window, I could see the beginnings of the garden I planned to turn into a reading nook. Everything was still and golden in the morning light, and for a moment, peace wrapped itself around me like a blanket. Then the doorbell rang. I glanced at the screen on the security camera, another smart suggestion from Amy. There they were, my parents and Tiffany, standing on the porch. Tiffany looked like she'd walked off the cover of a magazine, while Mom kept adjusting her dress, visibly flustered. Dad had his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. I took a breath and opened the door. "Francis," my mother exclaimed, rushing in without waiting for an invitation. "We've been calling you nonstop. Why didn't you tell us? And how did you afford this house? The lottery money hasn't even been released yet." "Hello, Mother," I said calmly. "Would you like to come in?" They followed me into the living room, their eyes scanning the elegant but cozy space. Shelves of books lined the walls, art I loved hanging above a gently crackling fireplace. Everything here felt intentional.
Mine.
Tiffany trailed her fingers along one of the shelves. "Well," she said, her tone a little stiff, "I guess now you can move into a better neighborhood. There's a cute colonial near our place for just $5 million. "I'm happy here," I replied evenly, "but thank you for your concern." "Very darling," my mother said, sitting down and giving me a sugary smile. "You have to understand our shock. This is a life-changing amount of money. You'll need guidance. Real guidance. Your father knows several excellent financial advisors." "I already have a team," I said, cutting her off gently but firmly. "Everything is handled." They sat in silence for a moment, blinking as if realizing for the first time that I wasn't asking for their help, that I had done this on my own. And maybe, just maybe, they couldn't control this version of me. "It's Francis, not Fairy," I said, trying to stay calm. Tiffany rolled her eyes and snapped, "Don't be difficult. We're trying to help. God knows you've never been great with money. Remember when I loaned you $22,000 for that little starter business?" I looked at her quietly. "You mean the money I asked for that you never paid back?" Her face turned red. "That was different. I needed it." "What you needed," I said, standing up and keeping my voice steady, "was to take responsibility. Something you've never really been expected to do." That was when my father finally spoke. His face had grown tense. "Now see here, your mother and I have always supported you both equally." I actually laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. "Equally?" I repeated. "You bought Tiffany a mansion as a wedding gift. You paid for her business school, bought her first car, covered her wedding, and helped her launch her own business. And what did I get for graduation? A lecture about choosing a more practical path. We were worried about you." My mother cried. "Your choices were so unconventional. We just wanted you. Wanted me to be like Tiffany." I finished for her. The polished, proper daughter, the one who always did what you expected. Well, guess what? My so-called impractical choices led me here. My job at the bookstore, the one you all thought was beneath me, is where I bought the winning lottery ticket. Tiffany leaned forward like she was offering me some kind of gift. "And now you can finally live a real life. We can help you invest, get you connected with the right people, and bring you into our social circles." "No," I said simply. The room fell completely silent. "What do you mean no?" my father asked sharply, like he couldn't believe I was serious. I walked to my desk and picked up 4 envelopes I had prepared the night before. This moment wasn't spontaneous. I'd seen it coming. "Tiffany," I said, handing her the first envelope. "This is a cashier's check for $90,000. That covers the loan you gave me with interest. You can stop bringing it up now." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. "Mom, Dad." I handed them the second envelope. "This is a check for $30,000. That's the total of every contribution you've ever made to me. Birthday gifts, tuition, help, all of it. I've kept records." They stared at the envelope, stunned. "And this," I said, holding up the third envelope, "contains documents showing I've already launched my own publishing company, started a charitable foundation focused on literacy programs, and set up my finances with one of the best investment firms in the country." I looked them in the eye, one by one. "I didn't need your guidance then, and I don't need it now." "But we're family," my mother whispered, her voice cracking. "Yes, we are," I said softly. "And family should love, without conditions. They should support your dreams, not try to force you to fit into theirs. They should celebrate who you are, not try to change you." I walked to the door and opened it. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my foundation's board. We're planning funding for new libraries in under-resourced communities." "You're making a mistake," My father said stiffly. You need us. I smiled, the weight of years lifting off my shoulders. No, Dad. You need me. And that's the real reason you're here. Tiffany stood up, her face tight with anger. So what now? You think you're better than us because of some lucky numbers? No, Tiffany, I said, my voice steady and calm. I always was. You just never took the time to see it. They turned to leave, but just before they reached the door, my mother paused, her eyes filled with tears. Frances, please. We made mistakes. We see that now. Can't we start over? I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. I saw just how small they all seemed, how trapped they were in their narrow view of success and love. They'd built a world around status and approval, and I never belonged in it. Maybe someday, I said quietly, but not today. Then I closed the door behind them. I walked back to my office and sat at my desk where the manuscript of my novel waited. It was a story about a girl who finds her voice in a world that keeps trying to silence her. We had just finished the ribbon-cutting ceremony. The room buzzed with energy. Literary agents mingled with journalists, sipping coffee and chatting about the future of storytelling. Nearby, children from our literacy program beamed with pride as they showed off their handmade books in a cozy display corner. Stephen stood beside me, his eyes shining with pride. You should be proud of this, Frances, he said, smiling like a proud father. You built something incredible, and you didn't waste a single cent on showing off. He was right. Sure, I could have spent my lottery winnings on a flashy skyscraper downtown, the kind with marble floors and glass walls, but instead, I chose to restore this beautiful old building. A place with soul, a place that now felt like home to writers, readers, and dreamers alike. The money hadn't gone to vanity. It had gone to building something meaningful, education programs, grants for emerging authors, and a space where stories could grow. My phone buzzed. A message from Tiffany lit up the screen. Saw your company in the business journal. Must be nice having everything handed to you. Bit of a rough time for us. Alexander lost his job. Maybe time you helped out your family. I sighed and deleted it without replying. Over the past several months, my family had tried every tactic: guilt, fake concern, subtle manipulation, even outright demands. Tiffany's starter mansion had become too small. Mom and Dad's country club dues were overdue. Alexander's failed investments had dried up their savings. I had said no before, and I would keep saying no. Just then, a soft tug on my sleeve brought me back to the moment. Miss Jones, a small voice asked. It was Alice, one of the students from our literacy program. She clutched a notebook to her chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. Will you read my story? Of course, Alice, I said, smiling warmly. I led her to a quiet corner and knelt to her level. It's about a girl who finds a magic pen, she whispered. Everything she writes comes true, but she has to figure out what's really worth writing. I blinked, touched by the quiet wisdom in her voice. That's beautiful, I said, really meaning it. I looked up. My mother stood a few feet away, her posture stiff, her eyes uncertain. She looked out of place in the casual, joyful atmosphere. The months hadn't been kind to her. Her flawless appearance had dulled, and the weight of worry showed in the lines around her eyes. This is a private event, I said quietly. I know, she replied, but I needed to talk to you. I turned to Alice. Why don't you show your story to Miss Lauren? She's our children's book editor. I think she'd love it. Once Alice scampered off, I stood to face my mother. Your father's company is collapsing, she said bluntly. Tiffany's house is in foreclosure. Everything's falling apart, and you're here playing with children's stories. I felt heat rise in my chest. I stood tall, meeting her gaze. Look around, Mom. Really look. These kids are discovering the power of their voices. Those authors over there, they're getting chances they never had before. This isn't playing. I'm building something that matters. She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her interrupt. You and Dad never believed in what I was doing. Not when I was writing my first short stories, not when I applied for that teaching fellowship, and certainly not when I invested my lottery winnings into this dream. You're not here because you care about any of this. You're here because you need something. She flinched, and for a moment I saw pain in her eyes. We're still your family, she said quietly. Are you? I asked, leading her to a wall lined with framed photographs, children reading aloud, authors holding their first published books, snapshots of community events and literacy milestones. Family celebrates each other's successes. Family asks about your dreams and your happiness, not just your wallet. When was the last time any of you asked about my novel or what I wanted? She looked down, silent. I didn't change because of the lottery. I continued. It just gave me the freedom to stop begging for approval I was never going to get. Tears welled up in her eyes. We were wrong. I see that now. Can't you forgive us? I forgave you months ago, I said gently. That's why I'm not angry anymore. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to keep putting myself in a position to be hurt again. She opened her mouth to speak, but a sudden commotion at the entrance drew both our attention. Tiffany had arrived, flanked by Alexander and, unbelievably, my father. Their expressions were equal parts hope and calculation. I could see the plan in their eyes. They hadn't come to support me. They had come to ambush me and my company's launch. I sighed deeply. The past had come crashing into my present like an unwelcome storm. But this time I was ready. Because this wasn't just a company, it was a purpose, a home for stories. And finally, I knew exactly where I stood. We're desperate, Tiffany sobbed, mascara streaking down her cheeks, her voice cracking as her carefully polished image began to unravel. Alexander lost everything in that investment scam. The bank is taking our house, and Daddy's company is going under. Please, Fairy, you have to help us. The room fell silent. Guests at our launch event tried to look away, pretending not to see the emotional storm playing out. But I felt every eye, every breath held in quiet anticipation. My family had turned my moment of celebration into a desperate plea for rescue. I looked at them, really looked. Dad, once full of authority and presence, now stood hollow and gray, the weight of failure slumped on his shoulders. Tiffany, always the picture of perfection, Tiffany wore designer clothes that no longer masked her unraveling life. And Mom, she hovered between pride and panic, her eyes betraying the internal war between dignity and desperation. No, I said softly but clearly, I'm not giving you money. Dad's voice trembled. Francis, please. But I wasn't finished. Instead, I pulled out my phone and tapped into a folder I had prepared weeks ago, just in case. I won't give you a handout, I said, holding up the screen. Dad, this is White Financial Services. They're looking for experienced advisors who know the community. They've agreed to give you an interview for a senior position. No promises, but it's a real opportunity. I swiped to the next image. Tiffany, the local art center is hiring a fundraising coordinator. You've always been good with people, organizing events, and creating buzz. They think you'd be great, and I agree. I turned one more page. Alexander, my friend owns a construction company. They're looking for project managers. It's hard work, but it's honest, well-paid, and stable. Tiffany stared at me in disbelief. You want us to work for other people? I want you to build something for yourselves, just like I did. To stop relying on titles, illusions, and borrowed money. To find out who you are underneath all that image. Dad stiffened. And if we say no, then you'll find your way, I replied calmly. But you won't get a cent from me just to keep living a lifestyle that left all of us empty. There was a long pause. Then, to my surprise, Mom spoke first. The art center, they think Tiffany would be good at fundraising. Yes, I said. Because she's great at it when she's not trying to impress everyone. Tiffany wiped at her smeared mascara, her hands shaking slightly. I don't know who I am without the image, without being the perfect daughter. I took her hand, the first physical connection in months. Yes, you do. You're smart. You're driven. You've just forgotten that those things matter more than appearances. Use them for something that actually means something. Dad cleared his throat. When's the interview? Tomorrow at 9 o'clock, I said. Don't wear the Rolex. Let them see your experience, not your ego. One by one, they nodded, not excited, not thankful, but maybe just maybe thinking as they turned to leave. Mom lingered for a moment. Your company, it's incredible, Francis. I'm sorry we didn't see it before. I know, I replied gently. Maybe someday you'll see me too. When they were finally gone, Stephen appeared at my side, his warm presence like a calm after the storm. You okay, kiddo? I looked around at the open, vibrant publishing space we'd built. The conversations about new books, the soft laughter of children discovering their voices, the walls lined with stories that were no longer silent. You know what, Stephen? I said, breathing in the moment. Yeah, I really am. Just then, Alice came running up, notebook in hand, beaming with excitement. Miss Jones. Miss Lauren loved my story, she shouted, bouncing with joy. Maybe one day it could be a real book, she said. I knelt beside her, smiling so wide it almost hurt. Want to know a secret, Alice? Every real book starts with someone brave enough to write it, just like you. That night, I curled up in my garden nook with a cup of tea, the soft light around me illuminating the pages of my unfinished novel. My phone buzzed with a message from Tiffany. I have the interview tomorrow. Any advice? I smiled and typed back. Be yourself. Your real self. The lottery hadn't just given me millions. It had given me clarity. It gave me the chance to build something honest, to stop seeking approval and start living truthfully. And that kind of wealth, real, lasting, and entirely my own, was worth more than all the money in the world.